What you're seeing is not a rice shortage. That is the effect. What you are truly seeing is 10% more water vapor now drowning our agricultural areas that were normally farmable with moderate rains and moderate monsoons. This water vapor is not coming out for a few more years.
A predator-prey society now more than ever, I think. And that's because people have become sheeple and they rely on all of the systems of modern civilization to survive. And they really don't even have it in their mind what they would do without certain things.
Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. It's about observing cycles, sharing insights, and solving problems together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David Dubine.
But about the light, if you've ever driven down a country road and you see, when you drive by certain people's properties, you'll see a bunch of their lights that come on, motion lights, sensor lights, stuff like that, motion activated solar lights, etc. And if you notice, some people would set it up to see where they're going at night. So they set it up on the paths that they walk. They put it over their buildings. They put it on their porch. They put it in all these places. The problem with that, in my opinion, and other smart people, because if you also drive down dirt roads, you'll notice every once in a while you see somebody's house that's completely dark, yet all of their lights and activated solar lights and motion lights, they're pointed outward a little further away from their property. And I'll tell you a little secret why that is. It's because they want to stay in the dark. If someone attacks their property, the lights are shining on people way away from their house, lighting up people further away from your surroundings by your house. So you'll be notified when they're way away from your house because lights start coming on the borders and boundaries of your property, and they can see you, but you got a big light shining in your face. So those people that come out and are checking out properties, there's a difference between, like I said, people that set up their lights so they can see where they're going and stuff, and they really don't have a concern about that kind of thing, obviously. But in a real scenario, you'd want to know, and you'd want to be that guy that has the dark house with the lights out on the edges of his property. And the reason for that is because there's a clear line of sight right to the things that are being illuminated. And I'm sure you know what I mean by that. But anyway, you can see them. They can't see you. And if you practice walking around your property, you should walk in some of the same exact places so you know exactly every sound, every little dip, it's muscle memory of your own property. So you can literally run around in the dark before you can even see and know that you're not going to trip over or fall over if you're being attacked. But if you're having to leave, which is going to be inevitable for millions of people, you're going to have stuff in your bag that's just going to get you along, which is obviously some source of fire and clothing that will protect you against the elements, because you're not only going to have to hide probably, you're not going to want everybody knowing where you're at because you have a big fire going. You're going to want to be dry, though, so I'm suggesting Gore-Tex.
Morgan Stanley warns commercial real estate is headed for a crisis worse than 2008. It's no longer a black swan, it's a flock of black swans. There's a banking crisis, commercial real estate, de-dollarization, rate hikes, and persistent inflation. BRICS is the hottest ticket in town, with an additional 19 countries looking to join and move away from the dollar. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get some first-class service. Patriot Gold Group offers the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver on qualifying rollovers. 888-546-7020. Call to get your free investor guide today. And now on with the video.
These are the same things that military people are trained. I mean, they're trained to have this item, this item, and this item, and this item. And the reason they're trained for that is because there's use for each item, and they may come into a circumstance where they're going to need exactly that. You're going to be able to eat and you're not going to, necessarily find food. So you're going to have some really compact nutrients, something that you can take with you. And you might be gone for long term. You never know. No telling what kind of scenario may happen in the future. Hopefully, we'll just go along hunky dandy, like everything's going to be all right forever. But it just doesn't appear that way. I see across the board in the financial markets, people talking about the dollar popping. It's going to pop. It's been predicted going to be popped for I don't know how long. Everybody knows the system is set up to where the wealth goes up and it stays there, and the wealth that goes down, becomes less and less. The value of the money's less and less. The cost of all of everything goes up. So right now, what happens if you just go to the store and there's no rice because there's a global rice problem? So you're like, oh, well, that's no big deal. I don't really eat rice, right? Guess what? A lot of the rest of the world eats rice, and guess what happens whenever they run out of their main staple? Well, they're going to start eating other kinds of foods, and when they do that, that impacts the market, obviously, because now there's a shortage of other things that millions of people don't normally eat, but because they have a shortage, now they're buying other things, and I could see that dominoing. And not only that, for the people that are like, no big deal, I don't eat rice, when there actually is a food shortage, you'll realize that rice and beans and all of these other things that people really don't like to eat on a regular, which is weird because it's like the healthy food, they'll realize that they can't go get that now that they think it's a good idea. Maybe I should go buy a tub of lard. Maybe I should go buy a giant bag of rice. Maybe, a 20-pound or 3 or 4 20-pound bags of beans, just to have them sitting around in your house collecting dust in the cabinet. But when and if the lights do go out, or the money becomes worthless, or we do indeed go into a thermonuclear war with one of two superpowers that have nuclear weapons. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen. They could pick out several different targets without going to a full-scale nuclear war. And believe me, these countries have already tested these scenarios above the ground, in the atmosphere, in the water. They've been doing it. Go look up the history. I know there's several lists out there of all of the times that nuclear weapons were used in the United States, and it'll blow your mind. Most people think it was, out here at Trinity Site in New Mexico by where I live. Yeah, that's the famous one. And a lot of people know about the ones in Nevada and stuff at the testing grounds way out there, away from everybody. It's amazing what the people don't know about what's actually going on in the world. And I was showing this article. I was going to send it to you. It's an article from Brazil, so it's in Portuguese. But in English, it says lotteries of houses with zero cost will start tomorrow. And you look at the picture, and there's these little tiny homes, the water jug on top for their shower, and everybody's packed together while you look around them, and there's millions of acres of forest and farmland with nobody on it. And they're trying to pack everybody in these little, what I recognize as a ghetto. The classic term of it from the 40s, and also the present day term of it now, where you have rows and rows where all of the poor people live and all of the people with mental disorders. And I hate to say it, but every little branch of people that couldn't make it into society, whether they had mental problems, psychological problems, physical problems, poverty problems, criminal problems, whatever it is, the reason that they couldn't make it in society, and then they shove them all in these little areas and give everybody some food stamps and a little bit of money, just enough to pay the bills. It's all beyond belief. We're entering into this Aquarius time, and I see it as a real pivotal singularity in human history where the food supply is changing forever. And if you don't take control of your food right now, it'll be gone forever. And I'm just trying to figure out, how do I opt out? How do I not put my kids in that system?
That's a recipe for disaster. That rice shortage is going to be a thing. Take a look at the NASA ozone. Just put in your search browser, NASA ozone, the ozone watch page come up. And then you look at today, I think the latest one they have is the 18th, at least the last time I was on the site. Look at the 18th. And that'll show you right now approximately how much ozone is down over the Antarctic and at the bottom half of the southern hemisphere. Now, there's also a tab up there that will allow you to go back in time. So just go back to 2021, just 2 years ago, and take a look at the 18th diagram of how much ozone, how many Dobson units are there. And you'll see something startling, that we're already getting into what would be ozone depletion column time that generally doesn't start until August. This mesospheric ice crystal cloud event, for a better term. For those of you who don't know about the event, it was the eruption in the middle of the ocean that shot water vapor up, not the general normal ash and sulfur dioxide. Yeah, there was a little bit of that. But there was so much water vapor that went up that pretty much got washed out of the column pretty quickly. But the eruption was so violent, it shot water vapor crystals all the way up 180,000 feet into the atmosphere. And it's in this layer called the mesosphere. And it creates these clouds, these flat little surfaces of ice crystal clouds. And the ozone breaks down on that. So the more of those ice crystal clouds, the more ozone will be broken down. So that was the call. As we come into August, September, October, November of this year, the UVB radiation will be ground striking an enormous amount of places, way more toward the equator than usual. This will be the world's largest story at the end of the year. This is going to be on every single news page of every headline. It is the most talked about event ever, and they're going to try to blame it on humanity somehow. There'll be a new reason. Instead of chlorofluorocarbons, it'll be something else that has caused this runaway ozone. Whatever, they're going to use it as the end times horse is riding. Another horse of the apocalypse just left the stable. There's a catastrophic ozone depletion event in the southern part of our world's getting cooked by UVB radiation that's affecting all the plant life, i.e. more rice production, Uruguay. I mean, look at Uruguay, rice production next to Argentina. And they were down 50%. Rain patterns are way off across the southern hemisphere. But what's interesting, though, wherever you think our Earth's magnetic field works and how cloud cells form from 0 degrees at the equator and go to 30 north and that whole convection system, there's been a huge amount of extreme 7 times more rainfall events. Usually Guyana is a good one to look at. They got 7 times more rainfall than normal. And you look at some areas in northern Brazil where they might be doing rice also, huge exponent of 5 times more rainfall than normal. Then you start to look at the equatorial areas around Indonesia. Man, it was a super soaker event, like way above the normal for their normal monsoons. I mean, dumping monsoons that just really showed the vulnerabilities of Jakarta. If it's going to keep raining this hard for much longer, then, you can't have record floods in the city and then a 5x higher record flood in the city. These rain events are showing the vulnerability of not only our infrastructure, but think about it on the other side of the planet. But the entire equatorial region, the rainfall patterns and atmospheric, whatever it is, a cavitation. I didn't understand this until I really wrapped my head around it. That eruption in one day put 10% more moisture into the atmosphere in one day. It added an extra 10%. And all that extra water vapor is having an effect on how the atmosphere is flowing, how the cloud cells are moving from the equator to 30 degrees north and 30 to 60 degrees north and south both. But think about the drag on that. Think about super clean, dry air, how much faster it moves than really saturated, very thick, wet air like fog. Try to super dense, foggy morning you're driving. That kind of denseness compared to like the brightest, clearest, sunniest day you've ever had. Like the difference in medium is what we're talking about, the difference of the medium of the actual starting of the cloud cells of our planet now. So as you look at those droplets that are everywhere, this is why rice production could be off, because you're equatorial up to, say, 7 degrees north latitude, 7 degrees south latitude, a huge amount of rice production's in this area. You look at the monsoons being off in Thailand and the dry season's floods in the dry season, like super wreck, like literally chest-high water in the middle of the dry season. That is so far insane. What was going on last year anyway? Now the effects of this Hungatonga eruption are really starting to hit. So what you're seeing is not a rice shortage. That is the effect. What you are truly seeing is 10% more water vapor now drowning our agricultural areas that were normally farmable with moderate rains and moderate monsoons. This water vapor is not coming out for a few more years. however the patterns take on right now, if it continues through next year. And another thing that's happening too, that's unaccountable, nobody understands why, are what they're calling these mega hail events. Grapefruit-sized hailstones coming down in dozens and dozens and dozens of places, all right now in this same week at the same time. Like, you get hail, don't get me wrong, it's baseball-sized hail used to be an extreme event. Grapefruit size, that's a whole nother league, and it might happen once, twice in a year, but not literally 30, 40 different locations on the planet in just a week or two. Something has changed in our atmosphere, absolutely. So the distraction would be, and I'm calling it ransom, the distraction, here we go. The distraction will be there's a rice shortage, because they only have to cover up between now and the ozone hole depletion event in August. Because if they come clean, they can focus on the rice shortage and the starvation and the rising prices and the fistfights in the supermarkets and the government lines. Did you see the video of the line in Afghanistan of the women waiting to get flour? That thing was stretched for like half a mile, maybe more. Single file, standing super close so nobody can cut in front of you to wait to get flour at the local, granary or government provisioned flour on a ration. That's going to continue with the rice. But what they're not going to tell you is that's going to be global, and that's going to continue for a couple years. Then they're instantly going to be right into the ozone depletion event. Now, how do these two dovetail and mix together? I'm not sure. You're a smart guy. You can usually figure that stuff out, so I'm all ears. How do you think they're going to connect all these events together to run in these next 2 to 4 months?
They've been doing it. I mean, they have the same answer for everything. It's that, human beings bad, eating traditional foods is bad. All of these different ideas that's just attacking normal human behavior. One of the articles I was showing on Zero Hedge, none of that is real. It's just all different ways to try to make people feel guilty so that they don't want to buy into natural foods and healthy lifestyles. Instead, there's nobody out there complaining that Captain Crunch or, any of that stuff is bad. Don't worry about that. You go eat that sawdust. It reminds me every time I go into the grocery store, not to be gross or nothing, but when I used to read about the Romans having to eat gruel, like some wheat and some barley, and they just mixed it around with some mud and cooked it up, and there you go. I bet they had great probiotics, however. But that's similar to what's going on right now. And, there's other times when they've put sawdust in products like bread and meat and different things and sold it because it's rationing. And there's going to be a time, and mark my words, because I've been watching it all across the board. Hacker this, hacker that. Mark my words, in the next several months, there's going to be major hacking happening in the financial sector, probably. They've been pushing for bigger type hack that turns off a large portion of society, like maybe the infrastructure, like a grid or a dam or, something like that. Wait till, for some reason, hackers decide to attack the food exchange or something that has to do with, trade between countries, or even hacking something that questions the value of things where it shuts down trade between countries. And I'm just wondering, if there's a world global rice shortage, why? Is there a normal reason? Is it the reason you're talking about is like a natural cycle? Or is it that all of these other events that they've been doing is a controlled burn or a controlled demolition of society altogether, where they're just slimming down the amount of things that people can do and can eat, and, the amount of power that they have. And, if you just rationally think about that with critical thinking skills, a little deductive logic, you would come to the conclusion that they have thrown a scam at you to charge you for breathing. So it's like that old movie Meatballs, where they got to fly up with a big vacuum cleaner and suck out all the air until we pay the bill. And then, we can have some of the air back. Or better yet, they could start selling air in a can like they do water in a bottle. Whoever came up with that idea, hey, let's give people the grossest water on the planet and we'll hike the prices up where it costs. Like I've been in stores where a little bottle of water is like $4, and then next to it is alcohol that you can get for like $1.99. It's like a 40. So you could drink corn syrup malt liquor for cheaper than you can get some water. gallon of gasoline outside is slightly cheaper than that bottle of water. And there's no reason to ship that bottle of water from Fiji all the way over here anyway. You know what I mean? I mean, we could clean water and have it right here for cheaper than anything. I constantly go to the water stations they have here in the desert because it's a necessity. So they offer machines up everywhere with reverse osmosis. Now, what happens when that gets turned off or they're no longer doing anything? Imagine all the people that are going to be freaking out when the municipalities, the water's off because the power's off. And that means the machines are off. That means the deliveries are off. And that means there's no water at the water station either because it doesn't work because it runs on electricity.
Yeah, what if they start denying you access to a spring near you that you used to rely on? Then what? I mean, you can force your way into the spring, I guess. It's usually a pipe that's just coming out somewhere on somebody's land that they let people go to. But what if it came down to like an armed guards there? You're not allowed to get water out of here. Then what happens? I guess it would depend on how heavily infiltrated an area was. I mean, at that point where they would put a guard out in front of the spring and tell everybody no water, just because no water, we're going to control your access to water, and nobody can get water from here, even though the spring's been running for 120 years and everybody gets water out of there. You can no longer just from today use it anymore. But when it comes to natural resources, then what? I mean, what is really going to happen if they try to station people out in the countryside and be like, all right, just guard you and it would probably be one person in the beginning and they'll disappear. Then it would be like 4 people out there that'll have to guard the station. And then what happens if those 4 disappear? Then what? How many levels of control could there really be controlling an area? Even in the Civil War in the 1860s, you have to think everything was really, really, really remote then. Like people were riding horses. There really weren't a lot of roads around. But it was, between horse carriages and horses. You have to think today's world comparatively. Either it could be a blessing that there's so many homes and there are so many roads and there is so much habitation and there are so many buildings and cities and towns that to be overrun like it was in the 1860s, there might have been very few places to go, but it seemed like everywhere got hit in the South. Everywhere. And there was a famous saying, like Sherman went through Georgia. Like you would consider it like the tiniest burg just in the middle somewhere, like 3 buildings and like a water mill to grind some flour and a boat landing or something. And they burned it to the ground. The most remotest of the remote, even in today's terms, like you had to come up a river and like another stream and you had to take horseback and today you can just drive to it, but completely, razed to the ground. So you look at it, you wonder, could it happen with the amount of stuff today? In the 1860s, it was really, really sparsely populated, but there wasn't that much that could destroy it all. It seems like there's some sort of formula here that I'm maybe missing part of, an algorithm. So, Ransom, you think an invading force, I'm not even going to call it just a force, could run through with the same consolidation and the same amount of damage in modern day as they could in the Civil War, running through super remote, incredible remote locations?
It'd be worse than that. I mean, you're talking about people that lived outside. They still hunted. They still lived hard. Most people didn't even have electricity. Most people were poor, despite popular belief. These were people that lived a hard life already. They knew about nature, so they could survive out in between stuff. And when they hit a town, they destroyed it. The Northern troops or the Union into Georgia when they were starting to win the war. And Grant and everybody was in agreement, all of them, that, you're going to destroy them. You're going to starve them out. You're going to shut it down. It's over. It was brutal. Not only that, when the Southern troops were attacking, more along the Mason-Dixie where people were considered more Union citizens, I guess, they were being harsh too. They were burning down people's houses. They would catch people alone. And it was horrifying. So if you think about that, on modern times with a predator-prey society now more than ever, I think. And that's because people have become sheeple and they rely on all of the systems of modern civilization to survive. And they really don't even have it in their mind what they would do without certain things. Like, where do I get food from? Oh, well, you just go to the refrigerator or you go to the store or you pick up the phone and you call Uber Eats or Pizza Hut, or all of those things are basically fantasy make-believe in a world with no electricity. where the government has shut down, where the water systems aren't working, so anything that makes that happen, ask anybody that lived right after hurricane. Thank God that in hurricane and tornado situations, you have an entire nation behind them and a government that can bring aid and people that can bring aid, even though in, prior years we've seen that government is not really that good at it. So you have to help yourself. In today's world, that was happening. You would only meet the predators. You're not going to meet the prey type people, the sheeple type people. They're all going to run themselves into the ground. They'll do what they're doing now. When society hasn't even collapsed, if anybody's been paying attention, society's collapsing around your ears in every major city in the United States, at least. Just paying attention here, if that's all you do, and you don't pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the world, you just pay attention to what's going on in America, like a lot of Americans do, what's on TV, what's on the news, what's going on here. You would see that all over the place, people are just stealing what they want. They're flash mobbing stores. A lot of people in the public are becoming perpetual line steppers, meaning they know the rules of society, but yet they want to step over those lines anyway and cause chaos. There's different groups that no longer even believe in the system here at all, like none of it, like even in the way that the United States has always been self-sufficient. Since the World War II, we were known around the world for a manufacturing giant that, look at the military that we put out in World War II in just a few short years. It was obviously line drawing. And so in today's world, you can see that. So when they're ready for an area to collapse, they're ready for it to collapse. And all signs indicate that they are using certain countries in certain areas to destabilize the entire area. And it's not just going on like, in one part of the world, like North America or South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. No, it's happening worldwide, destabilization. And they're using war to accomplish this. They're just using war and warlords. And then like NATO and the UN would deliver all this food to people that are starving. And then it would just end up in the hands of a few guys with military trucks. That was the real government, despite the actual government that wasn't coming to anyone's aid. If they manage to fracture it here or turn off the system, it is going to be a war unlike any other war. So the only one really to compare it to, I guess, would be the Civil War, where there were groups of people moving through forests, coming into towns, villages, and farmhouses, ranch houses, people trying to just live their life out there. They really didn't know what was going on in the world or none of that stuff. But the war still came to their front yard. And then you have like the Hatfield-McCoy type thing where they were just going to stretch a civil war for years. It could have been horrible. So anybody thinking that it'll be like that as far as the mass amounts of millions of people in the cities, it ain't going to be like that. Those people are going to take care of themselves because they don't know how to function on Earth. But there will be other groups that do know how to function and that are armed and that will take. I mean, that's just a zombie movie 101, right? Like, say, for example, The Walking Dead. If you've watched that, the very first rule in that they figure out is never let anybody take their protection away from them or they will be victims immediately. So it's like that in real life. So if something happened here in the U.S. right now, I'm just going to see a mass starvation and craziness going on in the cities. And people that know how to produce are going to beef up their security. And they're going to call their neighbors and they're going to ask their neighbors, hey, what are you going to do? Things like that will happen and it'll be horrible. I mean, in my opinion. Now, if we just get blacked out from another country, people are so selfish and crazy that would happen too. So if you imagine if they twist a little political spin inside of anything that's going to happen, which I was saying, mark my words, there's going to be hacks because that's what the elite are all warning about. The next big thing is going to be hackers are going to shut down the infrastructure. Hackers are going to disrupt the food supply or the energy supply or something. I don't know. It's getting spicy out there. So that's why I'm trying to, kind of at the same time pay attention, but ignore it. I just want to farm and then eat good. And when you go camping or when you leave your house for the last time because you have to, remember, eat a good meal first and then leave. Take some of the weight inside your belly. What was that old saying? You got miles to run before you sleep, miles to run before you sleep, or something like that. I think that might actually be a scenario, but I hope it's not. And I hope we just keep delaying it and kicking the can and delaying it and kicking the can. And understand what's going on, but I don't know how small of a fraction that is out there that actually pays attention to what's going on.
Just the absurdity of everything that seems to be happening today. Of they continue to try to have you consume more. Corporations are still pumping, and suddenly there's a cutoff. You got to wonder how much of it's cat and mouse, how much of it's just planned theatric, Beijing theater, Jingju is what they call that, Beijing opera. And still, the majority of the lion's share of everything you need to get, like high-tech gear, it all requires chips and things that are made from China, rare earth minerals. But see, just that alone, like put all of it in the hands of somewhere else, outside of your control or sphere of influence or control. It's just maniacal, nonsensical, cartoon vehicle kind of style. So now what? You have to wonder, is this just a planned chaos and these true families at the top? I've heard them termed as white dragon families, black dragon family, red dragon family, that have been in control. And, the serpent energies and the serpent dragons as such, off-world entities, if you will. Something else that seems to be extraterrestrial, extra-human, has seemed to be in control, even in Chinese society, since the beginning.
And this podcast has been brought to you by TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet. If you support this kind of content, please visit My Patriot Supply and TrueLeafMarket.com. I appreciate you spending your time with us, and I'll see you next interview.